between two peaks in Japan, the Kamakurayama and the Yakimoriyama. This is where we find ourselves racing today. This is the Twin Ring Motegi, a stone's throw away from Utsunomiya in Togachi Prefecture. This is a Honda test track, which has become, by its own admission, in terms of IndyCar, I would say a small place, a secret place, and one that gave rise to legacy. It was the place where Danica Patrick got her one and only IndyCar victory. This is Gateway, but a little bit more souped up for action. Round 4, 1/3 of the season will be score complete. After this point onwards, if there is any place you want to try and get things done and get things moving forward, this is the place you want to go and make that a reality. So, what will these drivers have to deal with today on a championship where it is close and is down to just 4 points between Alex Everitt and Thijs Barendregt out there at the top? They know that today is about scoring and scoring very quickly. There is your title standings as things stand. As you can see, Andy Scott has quietly got the Quantum car up to 3rd. Fran Herrera in 4th and Ollie Peters in 5th position overall at this point in time. And as we find ourselves in play today, we're sponsored, of course, by Apex Tracks, the motorsport and motor racing circuit wall art race track sculpture makers. They're manufactured using F1 motorsport-inspired rapid prototyping technologies and is the best place to grab what you can. Make sure you help them today, as well as the other partners we have today. Of course, Track Racer in the bottom right corner as we go through. Lovely stickers, 603 Autosport, Digital Motorsport, Esports Sim, and of course the GP Box as we get things going today. We're streaming live on Crest Autosport TV via Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch, hopefully with a extended brand new stream key after leaks that we had earlier on yesterday morning. But there is the schedule. Texas is our home next week, as Indianapolis has been moved to December the 8th to round out the season overall. But Twin Ring Motegi, certainly a very important track in this, I would say, global series that we've got going on. It's one of the only ovals iRacing has, which is in overseas territory, and a very strong one on top of that as well. Will it prove to be a key place for battling today? Well, 100 laps will decide that fate over the course of what we've got this season, as we get a look at Alexander Rogenbach making progress through the big long turn of 1 and 2, and then that very, very difficult final section of road is 3 and 4. This is one of the more unique ovals out there on the service as well. It goes over the infield road test track, which is more notably claimed for its MotoGP exploits over the course of seasons. I know Japan has not been a place for international racing for a long while, but that's the difference you can see. Very, very much a tighter turn 3 and 4. If you're going to see lunges, probably going to be into there. You see them more than into 1 and 2. But it does take a very strong element of skill to make this place work, and especially with Japanese asphalt characteristics, can be a little bit more greasier and slipperier as a race goes on. So that's also worth keeping in mind. Track temp is 34 degrees at this stage. Winds from the west at 5 kilometers an hour right now. So really not much that they have to be worried about in terms of those. But qualifying is soon to kick itself off. They will have themselves a full amount of action. That, of course, is going to be 2 laps that they go through. And as they deal with those 2 laps, they know that they've got really good chances to put themselves up near the front. Didn't really make too much of a difference last time we were racing, but field's got a little bit stronger and anything is very much possible. So, will that be the way that we find great racing today? Or is it going to be ever so slightly different, where we're going to see this be a more strategic battle? People thinking it's going to be either a 1 or a 2-stop race, depending. And with our 10 drivers here today, no Fran Herrera for this one at this moment in time. Should be an entertaining battleground to see who will get themselves up to the point and give themselves what they want. At least as far as practice is concerned, Dave Steadman put the fastest lap in with Alfredo Morales in second and Leonardo Paletta in third place overall, the Italian. So that's the checkered flag out then in practice. We are going to be moving ourselves over to qualifying and see who will be looking to put themselves up at the point around this very, very cool 2.4 kilometer oval track that they have here today. So who's going to be the guinea pig to put themselves out in front, and who's going to have what it takes over the course of a very long stint? First driver out then to the circuit is Jeremy Pronk, looking to put the 52 car in as strong of a position as possible. The Dutch driver for the Dutch sim racing team, DSRT, will be hoping for a good run. Got to move as far as you can to the blue cones, and then it's a very wide circuit here, so you can use a lot of this track to really gain momentum as you try and gear up for that flying attempt, which you're going to see right now, the first of two. We go into the side camera perspective here, the Cosworth steering wheel on these Delaras into 1 and 2. Hardly any wheel work at all, just holding that sixth gear, trying to get the power on. 332 Ks through that section, up to 342 before having to flick down into fifth, into fourth. The longer that the stint goes, it's going to be into third gear as well before exiting the oval and making that charge over to the line. 27.5, the opening benchmark that we can see at this stage. Dave Steadman looking for a really good start to today. Has been knocking on the door here and there. Has the pace, has the ability to challenge for victories, and over the line that is a 27.431, so immediately 1/10 faster on that lap, and it really does show the ability to stick that car down low on the Firestones. It's working well, Steadman at the stage, but Barendregt goes to a 27.3. That's good enough then to gain a few tenths. Alex Everitt now to the point, championship leader, 27.308. Really nice opener to get things going off. And the question is now improvements. None for Steadman, none for Pronk. Peter's certainly hoping that there's going to be something in the Crest Autosport car, trying to make a drive for it. Paletta goes third, and that 6.08 ties Rogenbuck's time from Ollie Peters. So wasn't quite able to get everything together on that lap, but Paletta looking really good in the ALP Motorsport car. Of course, has his teammate Alfredo Morales just now coming out. He'll only have one lap attempt left after having to reset the car for the first lap. So if Morales has got anything, he's got to show it right now. Paletta can't improve on the second lap, but can Alfredo Morales put his car where he needs to? Just trying to lisk it in towards the opening section. You can run it right down to the apron, which is being shown right now. Get that drive off the exit. Use all the road. He's right up against the wall. A lot of drives have been a bit slower to get there. Use all that track and to try and keep as much steering angle as straight as possible for this second section of road. Morales is going to make the charge then towards the point, and that is a 27.622 only. Good enough for 8th place, and a little disappointing there for the 18 who took pole last time we were racing with you with Crest Autosport. So those times certainly important. Couple drivers have neglected so far to get themselves out on track. Those drivers have been Jürgen Pedersen and Andy Scott. So I think we're not going to be seeing them making a legitimate attempt today at qualifying. I think they'll just take their start from the back of the fifth row and try and make their progress through 100 laps forward here today. So with that all said, let's get confirmation of our results then here from this brilliant Motegi track. As we can say, it is very much in the middle of a couple places, not too far from the town of Motegi, but it is Alex Everitt who will have control of things on the pole position, a 27.308, clear of his main rival Thijs Barendregt by 0.07 of a second. Leonardo Paletta starts third with Dave Steadman fourth, Jeremy Pronk will be going from 5th with Alexander Rogenbach in 6th. And it's Ollie Peters and Alfredo Morales with Jürgen Pedersen and Andy Scott making the 10. But it is expected that Scott will start ahead of Pedersen by virtue of iRacing here today. So that's always going to be something worth keeping in mind as we take a little look at some of the road course that they have here, of course, at Motegi. Beautiful middle sector, which leads to turn 9 and the hairpin at turn 10. It's worth noting as well, if you do find yourself at Twin Ring Motegi and you find yourself in the paddock at any point in time, you can head over to, as I accidentally hit my microphone arm, you can find yourself at the Gran Turismo Cafe in the middle, as they can see the qualifying times up on screen, as these drivers will get themselves a 5-minute warm-up to be all nice and situated before they get themselves into the race. But the key is going to be that you can do a lot of things when you're at Motegi. One of them is visit the Gran Turismo Cafe. Still though, iRacing is our port of call. And who is going to put themselves in the best place? It's worth noting that the grooves here are going to be interesting to see. It feels like it's going to be a single file track today, but if you can work that outside in, it's going to be more of a case that if you're searching that long line, you'll have more of an opportunity the later that this race comes about. And I'm not expecting too much to happen in that respect. It's going to feel very, very similar to a gateway in the sense that you're going to have to work to get down to that low line. And if you leave that door open, that opportunity is going to fall away. Alex Everitt's just about finding that at this stage. He's lost an entire car length, gets the drive against Barendregt on the exit. Is that a case of things to come? You can see them on screen trying to figure it out. Not going to get much through 1 and 2 today. See Barendregt struggling with that dirty air, washing out a little bit through that section. So you're going to see those different lines. 1 and 2 is where you're going to build the margin. 3 and 4 is going to be interesting. You can see Barendregt trying the uber high line, seeing what purchase he can get as he leapfrogs into the pits and overdoes it by about 10 Ks. It's going to be an awkward entry into the pits today. And we'll see how long they can manage as they try their level best to put themselves into position. So, Dave Steadman, definitely a driver to keep an eye out on here in the 74 today. Morales as well from down the order. We don't quite know what we're expecting here, but the top 2 being 1 and 2, and only 4 points between them. This championship could be next to nothing if it is to go to Texas, to round 5 of 12 in this series. So that is some of the focus that we've got our eyes on here today. But of course, the likes of the ALP crew, Morales and Paletta, will be certainly hoping that their charge and their run is going to work in favour. There is Morales, and of course we just saw a little flash of Paletta out there on screen. It's going to be quite interesting to see, though, how certain drivers are going to run. Looks like Jürgen Pedersen might not even make it back to server in time for the start of this race, which would mean we'll be down to 9 drivers only starting this one off. So for the Danish driver, he's got 2 minutes, and it might be that you get there. It might be that you just don't, and that might just be the last thing that certain drivers will be hoping for today. Some will, though, give yourself a lot less to work with in terms of passing drivers. I'm sure that will be one of the keys around today's race, how you make passes, especially early on in the stints. Later on, we've seen how tyres do tend to struggle. And for those who want that opportunity to find those big points, they've got to show it now. Otherwise, it might just be that they don't get the chance to show what they're capable of. Consistency, of course, has put Andy Scott 3rd in the championship. Hasn't really done anything. Doesn't want to go out there and put any warm-up time in. Just wants to get ready for the race. 100 laps. Drivers do it in different ways. And it might just be that this is the time. This is the place. Go out there, get things done. And maybe, just maybe, we might be seeing some interesting battles out there over the course of this race. Ollie Peters going around into 3 and 4, the tighter sections of the track, and that's what happens when you get it wrong. Oh, And a big hit there as the back loops around. Ollie Peters will not want to have that happen in the race. That's what happens when you push the margin slightly too hard through 3 and 4. The back will have a tendency to step out. That's why you need the anti-roll bar and the weight jacker, the in-car tools that are very, very useful to bringing yourself into play. Barendregt for the basic racing team. Looking good here in warm-up. Of course, you can see that is a 27.8 as things go. But these drivers know and understand that it's going to get interesting here about 3 p.m. in sim time. As the checkered flag comes out, they know the race is coming up. And anything that has been done with track wear on the track will be carried over from that warm-up session only. So there is the grid. Alex Everitt in control. Thijs Barendregt in second. Top 2 in the championship, 1 and 2. Leonardo Paletta goes from third with Dave Steadman fourth. Then it's Jeremy Pronk and Alexander Rogenbach, 5th and 6th positions. 7th is Ollie Peters with Alfredo Morales in 8th. Andy Scott going from 9th. And Jürgen Pedersen, we believe, is not going to be taking to start today in position number 10 on the grid. So with everyone on the grid already, the iRacing sedan will take itself off. And I always enjoy seeing the iRacing sedan out there on track. There are no lights on top of the iRacing sedan, which means it will only be 1 pace lap they'll be doing before they go to the green flag and get themselves underway here with Crest Autosport. So the patience is very much going to be there. And I know that if they're going to get themselves sorted out, they need to get themselves to single file quickly in order to attack 3 and 4 over the course of 100 laps worth of racing. Barendregt got it done, of course. Last time we were racing at Auto Club. They know that it will be a little bit different from just a light lift. They will have to use the brakes over the course of today at this souped-up Japanese gateway circuit. And you can say Twin Ring Motegi is a place which tests all aspects of a car. And they really do mean all aspects with both circuits as we go around. Through 3 and 4 then. We're gearing up and we're getting ready. It's 100 laps worth of racing today. And who's got what they need? Pace car dives on in. There is Barney the flagman with the green flag. And we're already underway as Everitt gets a good launch going forward immediately. It is Steadman who gets the lunge against Paletta, who goes low, trying to get it done then in the battle for third. And they'll go all the way on the outside. Steadman can't get the turn in. They're nice and calm. Morales and Peters also quite close off of the get-go as they make that run, of course, towards 3 and 4 through the left-hander. And already for the lead, we see a move. Everitt washing out to the outside, has to really check out of it as Thijs Barendregt now goes to the point at the end of the opening lap. It looks like we're going to have some battling throughout the entirety of this race, and that is exactly what we want to see. So, questions are going to be asked then early. We were green throughout nearly 2 races now here in this series, and I'm sure nobody wants to get in trouble. Morales through now on Peters. They go to 3 and 4. It's Everitt again back low, stealing that away. Morales now up a position, as we've seen. But this is all about the early goings, and again, Barendregt goes low. Will take it away for the lead. Just behind that, Jeremy Pronk looking under increasing amounts of pressure. You can see there, Alfredo Morales just behind. Everitt goes low, though. Searching for the race lead once again. Is it going to be another race of lead change upon lead change as they try and break away from Leonardo Paletta in the early stages? The answer to that probably looks like a yes at this point, as straight on through, Barendregt goes again here at 1. But the camaraderie will have to stop at some point here in this race. You have that feeling. Barendregt goes low, looking to cover off the move then, and for the first time, start to get our first defense for the race lead. Barendregt wants to lead for a section, and will do so then on lap 4, entering towards lap 5. So, they know that they've got to play the fuel game at some point today, whether it's going to be a 1 or a 2 stopper. And it's been a calm start to this race for a number of drivers. Pronk actually keeping good pace here in 4th place Dave Steadman hasn't really looked amazing off of the get-go. Has seen Paletta in the ALP Cup fall away from him. So it's going to be a tall order to get back 1.2 seconds away. He's not getting that help on the straights now of draft. Going to be very, very crucial the longer that a race like this goes on. There is Everitt coming out of 1 pretty calmly, and 2 half a second the gap, and no real dramas to speak of in the early goings. Rogenbuck down 2, Morales up 2. That's the biggest change we've seen so far in the opening foray to racing. So they move on to the 7th lap then of this race, and this is going to go by pretty quickly, you would feel, with the way that they are charging around this place. Gaps have opened up. There is Morales in 6th. 28.3 that last time by. Steadman really improving. In fact, Steadman must have got the hurry-up message. He was the fastest driver that time by, 28 flat. And sometimes you get into a rhythm and a zone that works. Back to a 28.3 though. Looks like drivers aren't going to be able to push super aggressively all the time. They will have to settle. Some laps are going to be big laps, and then they'll cool off the tyres, cool off on the maybe slight lifting and coasting into 3 and 4. That could potentially happen. It might just be a case that some drivers towards the end of the race might be having to think about their fuel settings in the car. They have many options. It's one of the things in one of the iRacing Indy 500 races, the first time they went to the IR18, a lot of drivers fuel saved and backed off to fuel mode 9 or 10 at that stage, just trying to make sure that they were in a range where they didn't want to cede the opportunities out there. So what more can you do? Rogenbuck going incredibly wide, actually, through 3 and 4 on that attempt through. Must have got caught in a bad groove or missed his point by about a good half a metre. Good few meters, I would have said. Hasn't costed him anything. He's still ahead of Andy Scott, who's made no progress through this field so far. But Barendregt in control. Now pulling out to a 7/10 gap. Everitt starting to drop back a little bit here towards Leonardo Paletta. 28.4 that time by. And the last thing that Everitt wants to see is Barendregt move outside of a second. That would be where you would say would be in the lap of the gods from that point onwards. And the work that has been done early is looking pretty good at this stage. 1/10 of the distance already scored in the books, and done so within 5 minutes. So you'd say a good quick job is being made of this race. If it continues on this stage, we should be done in 50 minutes here as they charge through. There is Jeremy Pronk, looking to get aggressive potentially with Dave Steadman. Be nice to move up to 4th. They've dropped Alfredo Morales here to the tune of 1.8 seconds here. So the gaps have been made. The top 5 looking pretty good in the early goings. I'd say they're still in with a shot of victory. But again, it's about, can you get close enough to make a move? And Everitt now falls outside of a second. Now to 1.1. Barendregt driving fantastically at the front. And now Leonardo Paletta, the Italian, wants to get himself into play. And the question is, how will he get himself into play? What's going to be the big key in order to unlock an overtaking chance? We've seen drivers get close, but not close enough to make moves. And speaking of drivers making moves, I thought there for a moment Ollie Peters was going to get closer, but he's dropped 4/10 on that last lap, which will be a little cause for concern for him. So just dropping a little bit of time there, getting a first taste of what the turbulences around this circuit can be like. I'm sure it's going to be an interesting scrap. Everitt gets back within a second though, so clearly he's not giving this race up. And it's maybe just a case of, I can't run as well behind someone, but give me a little bit of clean air, give me a pocket, and I might start working here. And speaking of working, Pronk and Steadman are pulling themselves into Paletta's range. It's about 0.8 of a second between both those drivers. The gap from Paletta to Steadman, from Steadman to Pronk. So this is where you're starting to unlock the early stages then of a race. You can get yourself into play with some very calm driving, and heads-up driving is certainly going to give you a lot to work with, especially at the Twin Ring Motegi. So, through they go. A long left-hander. They're all left, of course, through 3 and 4, but it's always going to feel like a long slog around this Twin Ring circuit. These corners feel like they go on for forever and a day, and it's the and a day which I think that does it for drivers. There is Leonardo Paletta, keeping himself well within attacking distance of Alex Everitt. Strategy might be the key today to unlocking a victory. Half and half, 50-50s are the key to winning this sort of race, but if they are going to be a little bit out of position, then there's going to be not much that they can do about it. Right now, gaps really forming to the final 4 in the field. It's 2 seconds to Alfredo Morales. Ollie Peters is a further second back of that, and then it's 4 seconds to Alexander Rogenbach, and 1 second back to Andy Scott in ninth, who clearly doesn't have any love with this circuit. It's running about 0.4 of a second slower than the leader at this point in time, Thijs Barendregt, who had a little bit of a slower lap there, 28.3 compared to the 28.1 of Alex Everitt. Don't expect the tyres to go off too dramatically here today in these colder conditions. I think they'll have a lot to attack with today, and especially as they're not heavily wearing the same way they would at Phoenix. This is the sort of track where you can still go out there, be aggressive, get things done. Lap 20 here of 100, and Leonardo Paletta wants to try and keep himself there in the 22, close to the 3 of Alex Everitt. The 2 of Thijs Barendregt has led the majority of these laps. He's done a good enough job leading the majority of these laps. Of course, there is a little point that comes in if you lead the most laps in the race. So emphasis to be up front, 1.4 seconds. The margin at this stage, but it's about half a second here now. Everitt to Paletta. It's about 0.8. Steadman to Pronk, and Steadman, as Paletta starts to turn the screw, struggling to stay with that battle for second place. And we know that Paletta was very aggressive early with his tyres in the last race at Auto Club. Maybe has dialed it back for today, just being calm. Maybe Alex Everitt starting to be the one with a few problems in that regard. Of course, we don't have privy to know what they're doing with the setups, but what we do know is that this is going to be a very important race that gets themselves moving forward. Still, though, they have a chance to make it a reality. They have the one fast repair if they do get into trouble. We haven't seen the driver get into trouble since the big incident with Alexander Rogenbach and Jürgen Pedersen last time we were racing at Auto Club. So that fortunately didn't cause a caution. And now you start to see some interesting things here. And Jeremy Pronk is the first one. He's diving down on the apron and getting himself a stop after only 23 laps of running. That's incredibly early. I am surprised to see Jeremy Pronk trying this one out. I don't think being over-aggressive on the stops is going to work for him here today. But if you can only go 23 laps on the fuel, then that poses a big problem. The other thing he could be doing is going for an uber undercut here today and trying to make it last 75 laps, which even that I think is a little bit outlandish to speak of. So he'll drop the lap. Barendregt still in control. Everitt in second. And Leonardo Paletta is third. Steadman fourth. Pronk off of the pits then. And away in the 52. He'll be looking to get up to speed on this very long left. He'll be just behind Alexander Rogenbach, so he can use that for a little bit of a slingshot advantage, being a lap and a half behind in the stop. But it is still Barendregt who leads. 1.8 seconds now, the gap. And they can see Pronk's effort as Barendregt is on screen right now, calmly dealing with that race. It does also alleviate the pressure on the back of the 74 of Dave Steadman. He doesn't really have to worry so much about his race and what he needs to do with it. So this might just be a silver lining here for Steadman. I wasn't expecting Jeremy Pronk to dive in so early to make that call. This might just be an undercut, get ahead, and it will lead to another undercut, of course, in the final stages of the stint. So keep that in mind at this stage. Pronk out of the pits, 27.8 on the outlap. So the pace is certainly there. 27.8 is far quicker than what anyone else is doing. As Leonardo Paletta stays with Alex Everitt. And it might just be the case that everyone else is going to go for a more traditional way forward, try and make this race theirs. Fredo Morales is in P5. He has built that gap up now to Ollie Peters, who did have a moment on lap 23 of this race. It's worth keeping an eye out on because it was going through the left. He just got really, really high through the corner, and that's what dropped him the second. And that's why he's a little bit further adrift now in 6th place. 2 seconds now to margin at the front. Barendregt has pulled another second out, with Leonardo Paletta in second, or in third now, sorry, with Dave Steadman in 4th. So Steadman's done really well to close in. There was a poor lap there by Leonardo Paletta. So 28.6, he dropped 0.4 of a second. And we talk about tyres having limits. Maybe those Firestones have reached theirs. And the answer is they absolutely have. It's 28.8. I think Paletta's going to be due soon to dive down into the pits. He is not loving that setup at all right now. Steadman is in range. How much of a bullet do you want to fight? Steadman looking low, trying to get something done, but isn't going to find it just yet. You can see, much better lap from Paletta there, 28.4, so it's a good recovery lap of stints. That is there, onto lap 31. And again, the charge is there. It's a look low from Dave Steadman. And as he gets the move down low, he's got to be able to come up the track and cover it off on the exit. And he does exactly that. Wonderful move. And up onto the podium for the first time goes Dave Steadman at the cost of almost 2 seconds here to Alex Everitt, trying to make that overtake happen. And sometimes it's the quiet stuff that gets you through. But again, we focus on Jeremy Pronk here. We need to, because he's doing 27.8, 27.9s. The leader's doing 28.2s and has been doing so over the start of the stint, 28.1. So it's a couple of tenths of a second every lap. The longer that this goes, I think Jeremy Pronk might just play himself into a leading position in this race. So it's going to be cause for concern for the drivers around. Was with Steadman, was with Paletta, and is definitely going to be doing quicker times than them. At this point in time, the key is going to be at what point you dive down into the pits and make that decision to make a stop. It looks like those drivers at the front are all trying to make a one-stop work today, and it might just be the way this race gets won, and a bit of fuel saving might be on the cards for that to be a reality. Still though, interesting, the battle for 7th and 8th. We haven't really talked about this too much, but Andy Scott is quietly staying and keeping pace with Alexander Rogenbach, both of whom have been unlapped by one Mr. Jeremy Pronk. So for Scott and Rogenbach, the battle of the Alexes. There's 3 of them in this series. You've got 2 Alexes and an Andy. So battle between Alex and Andy is going to be key. So the battle of the A's. See what Andy can do to keep in range. Gap to about 1.1 seconds at this point in time. So calm falls in Japan right now as Thijs Barendregt continues his lead. There is Rogenbach in 7th position, trying to keep himself in play. Pronk up to his next target now, which is why his times have struggled a little bit. It's Ollie Peters. So there's Dave Steadman in 3rd place. Lap 36 of this one at the moment, and there is Pronk, and being just a little bit behind Ollie Peters, there is no requirement for Ollie Peters to let Jeremy Pronk through. Pronk's still got to make the pass as he would do any other place, which is always going to be quite difficult to happen. So we'll see how long it's going to take there. It's a 28.3 being caused a little bit there in the draft from Pronk. But if you can go and gain a 10th here and a 10th there on this charge forward, do him some favours. And of course, Everitt will be getting a lot of help here on that by teammate Ollie Peters, saying, is that Pronk behind you? Yeah, don't make it easy for him. That might be the key here from Dutch Sim Racing Team driver. It's very high out of 4. And he's trying to do as much as possible here. We're coming up towards that first pit window for one stoppers as they're trying to get themselves towards lap 50 if they can. Barendregt on 38 at this stage, but again, Jeremy Pronk searching for a move. And again, he's not quite getting what he wants. Ollie Peters has been very good in matching that pace, and I think it's someone who works a lot better running with drivers than without. But here comes the look low. Not going to hold him up too much longer. Jeremy Pronk comfortably picking that one up on the alternate strategy here today at this place. Everitt then is second. Steadman's still third. Those gaps staying around 2 seconds at this point in time. Steadman bringing the gap under 2 seconds with that lap. 28.191. And Paletta is actually starting to fall back into his teammate here, Alfredo Morales. So this is for 4th and 5th. And this will hurt this section of the stint for Leonardo Paletta. He looks really good when he starts off these races, but he does fade away quite quickly. And that might be a cause for concern in this 100 lapper at the Twin Ring Motegi. In through 1 and 2 once again. Of course. Oh, you get very close there with the apron. Leonardo Paletta. But slowly starting to want to step away. But they're all okay. They're doing the right work at this point in time to keep themselves open and honest for the second half of this race. Which I think is where it's really going to start. You always buy a ticket to the end. And I think all 9 of these drivers have done so to this point. Nothing really has happened crash-wise in this race, which is good news to see. But the gap now 3 seconds for Thijs Barendregt, who has just driven fantastically. If you look over his laps, 28.1, 28.2, 28.1, 28.2. You know, at the start of the race, he was doing basically exactly the same thing. He's been running to a number. That's his story, and he'll stick with it. And there's not really much more you can say against that at this stage. He's even running quicker than Jeremy Pronk right now, which is just a testament to how quick Thijs Barendregt is driving here. Another 28.2. Everitt just can't match. 28.4, another 0.2 of a second. Steadman pulls in another 10th, brings the gap to 1.6. And we know that Steadman is a really good late stint runner. So that might be something there. Ollie Peters dives down into the pits. And it was a late call to dive in. You can see the front is absolutely crabbing to one side. So it looks like Ollie's been in the walls somewhere. And it will be through 3 and 4. So he just gets caught up on the wrong groove. Has to try and slow it down. And then he's into the safer barrier there. So he has to dive down into the pits with the damaged car. He'll get the fast repair. And he'll get back out and going. Good news is it's within the pit window. He'll have to go 56, though, on the strategy stint. So definitely falls behind Pronk by a long margin. And sometimes you have to be a bit cautious of that. Paletta now will dive into the pit and will also be joined by Morales. So they go 45 laps. And they call that teamwork, making the dream work. They both dive in at exactly the same time to make their stop a reality. So then, will they get much work compared to the trio at the front? Pronk is already trying to make his charge to get back through. Peters is behind now. Scott and Rogan Buck's battle. And in comes Steadman with a big puff of smoke as well to make his stop. So they're starting to come in now. They trickle in one by one. Morales and Paletta looking like they're going to get themselves out and away. And Pronk's just going to breeze on by them there. You saw him just go in and out of shot. And there goes Pronk. So Paletta, no surprises, out ahead of Morales here. The key's going to be Steadman. Rogenbuck is into the pits now. So pitting from 7th position. Steadman now leaving his box. And where's he going to come out in comparison to Pronk? There's Pronk now, making his way into 1. It's going to be close here on the exit, but I think he's got him. And on the exit and up to speed, Jeremy Pronk, I think, is a challenge for 2nd position. In comes Everitt then on lap 48 to make his pit stop. He could go not much further, leaving himself 52. Coming to the end, I think some drivers here are going to be pretty close when it comes to strategy. Paletta's come out really well, actually. He's right behind Dave Steadman. So will that be a move on track? Here comes Paletta looking low. There's Barendregt, your leader. He's staying out and he's making the strategy of 1 stop, work a treat. Paletta searching the same way he had to that Steadman did in the opening stint. Through 3 and 4 again. Nothing much doing as they come along towards the exit. Everitt out of pits then. How close is Pronk going to be? He's trying to chase this down. But Everitt getting himself up to speed. There's about 20 k's of difference. But Jeremy Pronk is officially in 3rd fastest and 3rd on track at this point. Scott is in, but the leader is in. Thijs Barendregt then made it to halfway. Looking to try and make it halfway to the end, and how much time can be clawed in. That's the chase that Alex Everitt's got to do on number 2, Thijs Barendregt, but at least for the moment, not quite happening here. Paletta was unable to make the move happen on Dave Steadman, and Steadman's got the hurry-up notice. He is driving right now. Barendregt is already out and away here, and that is quite impressive. Everitt's only just now making his way through 1 and 2. Barendrecht's going to be up to speed onto the oval. And Everitt's still got a car in the way in the form of Andy Scott. So, shows you the gap. Everitt gets by Scott without too much issue at all. But, again, it's big gaps that we're starting to see. Now, watch Jeremy Pronk start to fall back here. Times have fallen to a 28.6. This is about the time he made the stop in the first stint. So, how long does Pronk want to go? I think about to lap 60, lap 17. He's struggling to get any sort of grip in the tyres here. Looks out wide. And that's another take into the pits here from Jeremy Pronk. So, this is really worrying for the way Pronk's got the car set up here. He's going to be 3 stopping his way in this race, and he's going to fall 2 laps down by that metric. So, a real shame. Looked like he had pace, but those tyres, I think he's eating tyres for breakfast right now. Firestones seem very, very lovely for Jeremy Pronk, which will not be the way he wants his racing to go. Still, though, Thijs Barendregt maintains a 2.5 second margin at the front of this field over Alex Everitt in 2nd. Dave Steadman very comfortably in 3rd, with Leonardo Paletta just behind there in 4th place. It's Alfredo Morales 5th. Ollie Peters is 6th. Pronk will now fall a lap down. It's worth noting that Alexander Rogenbuck is now 2 laps down here in this race. So he's had himself a very long stop by the looks of things. Might have been caught speeding on the lane. Could be one of the issues there. So, a long stop has not helped Rogenbuck. He falls way down the order. Pronk still in the pits, by the way. And I think only now gets himself going. So that'll be a full refill. You'd expect to get back out and going once more. He's going to fall a 2nd lap down. Because of that, Barendregt making his way around without any worry at all. And there'll be more traffic fodder for Alex Everitt to reach as and when he gets that. So something just for a bit of thought. Paletta's worked his way back here to about 0.6 of a second. So I wouldn't call it all over and done with just yet in the fight for 3rd place. 74 and 22. Going out there. And a little bit more of a wider line here by Dave Steadman. Maybe trying to work in a bit of that middle groove. Or just maybe trying to make life a little bit tougher. Try and run the outer line. Left just staying there patient, but knows that this isn't going to be the easiest way to make something happen here at Motegi. It's a long and labouring track at times, and we look at Paletta. We'll go on board here from a driver's eye perspective. This is what makes it difficult. You get in underneath, but you don't want to be underneath in a corner. So for Leonardo Paletta, see, he takes a little bit more of a higher line. Still trying to work that higher line in. But won't get as much of a drive off the exit because he's been stalling out through that section. Through 1 and 2 is going to be interesting. Again, it's that wider line from Steadman. He moves down the track to cut off that air supply. Which means that there's naturally more understeer for Paletta. He has to lift off the accelerator a bit more. This is where you've got to be very, very coy with the way that you manage out towards overtakes. So that's certainly not paying out at this stage for Leonardo Paletta, who loses a lot there through the middle part. Calm though still needed. We're 40 laps away when they next cross the line from the end of this race, which sees Thijs Barendregt as its leader, as has been since about lap 7 of this event. Proven he's had the pace. There's not much Alex Everitt can do. That championship is going to be tightened up dramatically if things are to stay the same. And of course there are still traffic points. Pronk is 3 laps down, Rogenbuck 2 laps down, Andy Scott 1 lap down, Ollie Peters last driver on the lead lap. There is Jeremy Pronk, and there is Ollie Peters in 6th place, trying to make something happen. And again, it's worth noting this, Alfredo Morales is only 3 seconds back of Leonardo Paletta. So there is a chance here that if the tyres go off again from Paletta, that Morales can bring himself back into play. It's looking very processional at this point in time with 38 laps to go when they next cross. But sometimes you don't get everything your own way in sim racing. Not every race can be a hit. And for Dave Steadman, this could be an awkward moment because he's got traffic to deal with in the form of Andy Scott, who should get out of the way. But the closer that they pour up towards, the more likely it's going to be trouble here. As Steadman washes up, hits the wall. Steadman tags the wall on the exit of 1 and 2. That is the last thing you want to see happen. And it looks like there is a bit of issues with the front potentially. On the straights, really skewed out. But it looks like he's okay for the moment. Paletta going through, looking underneath. You can see it's not the same on that higher line for Dave Steadman. It's a comfortable overtake. So Steadman from 3rd place. Yeah, he's going to have to bite the bullet here and dive in. I thought as much. You can see it as they go around. That small tap has done a lot there to the suspension, and Dave Steadman is taking that decision. Dive into the pits, get the fast repair on it, and get back out and racing again. So, dramas that you weren't expecting to see out there on track, and mightily important ones the longer that this is all going to be going forward. So, at least for now, there'll be 5 on the leading lap as Ollie Peters will take that 5th place away. Everitt in 2nd, but the gap has really come down. Just 2 seconds here. Most of that is down to the fact that Barendregt has had to spend the last 3 or 4 laps in the dirty air of Jeremy Pronk, who has unlapped himself here in comparison to the number 2. That's why that gap's come down from about 2.8 down to 2. Barendregt has been unable to really do much. 28 threes has been the order of most drivers at this point in time. Steadman is back out and away again. He's in 7th place after the hit. He'll be trying to chase down Andy Scott between now and the end. I'm not sure what we're expecting, whether it's going to be some splash and dashes to the end or not. Most should be on the one stop. There is Alex Everitt right now, getting everything nicely sorted in that second position. It's just a case of hoping that Barendregt finds mistake the same way that Steadman did. And this is the sort of large track, as we look at Dave Steadman there in 7th position. This is the sort of large track where you can get suckered into a mistake like that, where you're just running the same issues through 1 and 2. You don't really have too many difficulties, and then suddenly, oh no, I'm in the wall. Out of relatively nowhere, can be a little bit of a pause for concern as they go through. Still though, Paletta's been quite interesting actually over the last few laps, whereas Everitt and Barendregt have been 28.2s and 28.3s. Leonardo Paletta here has put 4 straight 28.1s in and a 28.2. Unless he's been fuel saving, he feels like he's got enough to go full bore to the end. That might be what we're seeing at this point. Either that, or he's trying to very aggressively get onto the back here of Andy Scott, save a little bit behind while he tries some passes. He gets going again. It's a very interesting game that these drivers are playing, trying to make sure that they've got strategy in their hands. But at least for the time being, it is still a game looking at the dash, hoping you've still got enough to make it towards the end of the race. 2.3 seconds, the margin at the front. So if there is a running out of fuel, there won't be too many dramas to speak of. 30 laps then, the end of this race, and a bit less now, 29 to go. Who can do what in the final stages? A lot of gap that have formed in this field. Everyone's spread out by about 3 to 5 seconds between, depending on what lap you are on at this point. One non-starter here today, Jürgen Pedersen. Shame, was looking ready to get things going, but must have got a call from elsewhere that said no. But still though, quite an interesting scenario we find ourselves in at this time. In comes Alexander Rogenbach for a second stop then, which is a curious detail. Hasn't made contact with the wall. That is genuine strategy that Rogenbach is on right now, and it is going to drop dramatically down the order then after having to make that stop. Still though, we're not out of the woods just yet. There is Barendregt, has led 2/3 of this race, coming up towards leading nearly 3/4 of the race. And you feel it's been a rather quiet and enjoyable Wednesday night's drive from Barendregt so far. And I think the element of patience is going to have to be usurped at this point in time to have the race go the way that many needed it. A lot of drivers pitted just before that lap 50 period, so we might be seeing a couple of splash and dashes if fuel isn't managed properly. There is a bit of traffic coming up though for your leader Barendregt. He's got, of course, Pronk, who unlapped himself, and Alexander Rogenbach, who is on the freshest tyres of anybody in the field. He may not even catch it between now and the end as they run beautiful oval, effectively plonked on top of a road course, which is the first that you've seen of a oval and a road course, and not necessarily these quote-unquote rovals they like to be called now. And I'm sure that this isn't going to be the way it's going to be towards the end. Everitt, now 3 seconds back here of your leader. Got him on screen right now. I was wondering about his paint and the gloss and the matte of it, whether it's showing up. I'd say that gloss and matte has cost him about 3.5 seconds here over the course of this race so far. So maybe he needs to go back to a regular standard paint to keep himself in championship lead, heading to Texas, of course, 1 week from today. A much different, much smaller, much more grittier race that they're going to have. There is Ollie Peters, and he's just been quietly working down that pace. Half a second on that last lap over Alfredo Morales. So he's definitely eating into that gap there in 4th position. He's got it down now to 1.6. So whatever's happening here for Ollie Peters, it sure is working right now. And it will sure work for a very long time, you would feel, the way that he's attempting to run this race out. We're not now here at the end of this one. And into the pits does come Ollie Peters. So he does make the call. He can't make it happen on his own. Have to make the lunge and get down into the pit. So drivers are starting to work out whether they're 1 or 2 stopping. And the majority of the field looks like they're starting to knock on 2 stops door. And saying this is the way we're going to have to do it, not the way that we want to do it in this race. So Ollie Peters now will fall the laps down. Will fall behind Dave Steadman, behind Andy Scott. Bronco course is 2 laps down. And on a 3-stop, we believe. Unless he's gone into due management mode. So the here's, there's and everywhere's into play right now. How long are you going to make this a game? Question, gap now 4.8 seconds. So Alex Everitt really struggling in the tank here. His laps have really gone off over the last 4. 28.3, 28.4, 28.5, 28.6. Barendregt just continues at that pace. 28.5 from Alex Everitt. It's now 5 seconds. Barendregt is just putting on a clinic at this point in time where everybody else cannot at this point in time. Paletta can't even stay with Andy Scott right now in 5th place. And this is how Andy Scott's keeping himself 3rd in the championship right now. He just quietly gets the result. Nowhere all race long. A lap down for the majority of it. And in 5th place. Sometimes it just writes itself how strong you need to be to get all of these races sorted. Barendregt on a pretty sizable train on the back now. It's also got Ollie Peters there, so it's going to be worth keeping in mind. We're in towards now the last 17 laps of this race, lap 84 of 100. And that gap just continues for Barendregt to extend out. You feel if he tagged the wall right now, he'd still be able to get himself over the line in first, should he do it to JR Hildebrand on the final lap, but we don't put that into the minds of drivers. 4 seconds now the gap between Everitt and Paletta, who's just been quietly working through. And Alfredo Morales is a further 7 seconds back, biting a very, very untasteful bullet. He's about to lose the lap to Dave Steadman, who is trying to maraud his way through, but he's not going to get any help there through 3 and 4. And that's going to be the key. Barendregt very nearly getting on the radio. Say, hey, Mr. Rogenbach, can I have a way through? And there is Morales in 4th. Every right to take the low line, the Venezuelan. And it's going to force Steadman to make an actual pass here. Goes down low. Look at that, some action here today at Twin Ring Motegi. And fully completed was the move as it turns into a 5.2 second gap on lap 86. 4 on the lead lap right now. The difference between 1 and 2 stop, a fine line in the sand. Barendregt knows that all he's got to do is watch who pits behind and keep the gap, and he has done exactly that over the course of this race. Be looking to do exactly what Alex Everitt did in the first 2 races, which is 2 wins in a row. First 2 rounds of the championship went Everett's way. His next 2 certainly have not, but Everett's done as much damage limitation as possible. Second places have been there, have been fruitful, and have given the right results over the course of what we've seen. But they're soon going to be ticking into those final 10 laps. The question's going to be, does everyone have enough fuel to make it to the end? I'm sure there'll be some fuel whisperers, and they'll be looking at fuel modes and other elements. There's a look at this expansive circuit here of Twin Ring Motegi. The infield turns 3 and 4, that switchback section, that final chicane section there, very difficult. The off camber as you go through into that final corner. It's a big downhill into there. Going to go on board then with Alex Everitt here, giving himself as much of an opportunity to try and chase down as he can. You can see from a driver's eye perspective, down into 4th gear, back onto the power again, and really trying to get as much as he can out of it. 28.4, I think he's okay on fuel now. Maybe took a couple laps to bring himself in. There'll be 10 to go as he crosses, and it's a lonely world right now, the way he's driving. Into 3 and 4, you can see it goes down into 4th gear, revving around that middle light button, getting back onto power once more. So it really is starting to get entertaining, and what is now interesting is Morales and how much time he's dropped actually on that last lap, because he did a 30.2, and Morales here 29.9. I think he's in a real fuel save. He's only reaching 312 on the straights. I think he's dropped down a fuel mix mode to try and get him back on the hold him on the lead lap. I won't be surprised if Paletta does the same. Stedman's going to make his way by Paletta, and that will put Scott then in a little bit more trouble, as that gap from Stedman will be only about 5 seconds here. So Paletta 29.6 on that last lap. Both of the ALP cars are in critical fuel save mode in 3rd and 4th, trying to get themselves in to home. It's a lap, really, that Andy Scott's got to get by. But in the last 10, oh, here's going to get interesting here. You can see how much you got there. Morales lets through both Pronk and Peters. Peters goes incredibly wide. I think he knows that he's on a game as well. That's 3 drivers, 3 different laps. Peters 1 lap down, Pronk's 2 laps down, and on the lead lap is Morales, but only for a moment longer, because there is Thijs Barendregt, who's been able to run a higher mix, as in comes Andy Scott. So any grandeur he was hoping for gets robbed away with about 7 laps to go. These are critical laps here, as Barendregt, oh, big one, it's a big one, and that's going to bring a caution out then. Rogan Buck and Ollie Peters coming together inside the final stages of this race, and that is all Ollie Peters. He just washed out through 3 and 4, nowhere to go. Rogan Buck the bystander, and now we've got a 3-lap showdown on what had been a very tame and tactical race here today. Barendregt, who was well on his way, there's another look at it. That's how quickly it can go wrong at Motegi. Now all of a sudden we have got a race on our hands, and it will leave only a couple laps left to go. Be a real shame for Ollie Peters that he was doing so well in 8th place. 2nd crash in 3 races, and I'm sure with how long it's to go, it leaves that extra bit of fuel saving. It is a bit of help for Paletta and Morales. Of course, Morales had just dropped the lap though, so that's going to be a little bit of problematic elements there. And there's nothing that Ollie Peters can do. The tyres just let go. He was full lock the entire way. And now that's interesting. Barendregt comes in and Everitt comes in. That much I'm not surprised about. What I am is that Paletta stayed out. So Paletta's going to try and hold on for 3 laps here to win this race. And it's going to be a case of whether Everitt and Barendregt, who will take tyres and take fuel here at this stop, will do the correct move at this point. Whoever comes out first is going to have the advantage, and it is going to be Barendregt here who gets a better run off, but they've got fresh tyres. Leonardo Paletta's on old tyres here and fuel. If he's to hold on for the 3 laps we do believe it's going to be quite interesting to say the least. More importantly than that, all those here, as Paletta is now your race leader, in front of Leonardo Paletta, they should be able to get a wave around at this point in time. So that would be Stedman, Scott, and Morales as well. will all be waved to the race lead as they will go through and they won't have to save much. You can see there's a lot of clutching going on with the fuel as well. I think that's what Leonardo Paletta's doing. He's leaving that much of a gap because he knows that he's got to save every morsel of fuel possible to get himself home. Victory might be the last thing in his mind right now, as he will soon learn that he is P1. Pace car does 97, 98 kilometers an hour right now. Paletta, for comparison here, only doing 99. So he is desperately trying to coast his way around. He's got to be careful here that he doesn't get a penalty for being too far behind the cars in front. He is the leader, of course, and I'm sure that these drivers will go through. Lap 97 now here of this one, and they line up here a little bit. You've got Barendregt there, Everitt, of course, setting up, and because they're setting up too wide, I don't think they're being waved around here. The pace car, of course, right now still has lights, so they'll go another lap, which is all the more important. But you're seeing here how much Leonardo Paletta wants to make it home. He is clutching everything he can to give himself as much fuel mode for the end of this race. You wanted a showdown at Motegi. You're getting a showdown here at Motegi. But, as we do expect, this isn't the easiest race to go out there and win. And Leonardo Paletta is trying to give everything he possibly can. See, he's actually dropped down to 78 Ks. He's really trying to get as much as he can out of it right now. God, who'd have thought a car traveling at motorway speeds and less, or you could say A or B road speeds right now, would be the most entertaining thing we'd say we're watching all race long. Certainly has been at this point in time. We expect the lights off of the pace car at the front. Morales, of course, is a lap down. Stedman is a lap down as well. And the lights are now off, so they'll get the wave around. Morales will get that wave around, which is important because he made that stop. And that might be another thing here. If Paletta feels that he can't make it home, but Morales can, who did have to come in, or actually, no, he just dropped the lap, that might be very interesting here. So, pace car's got a pretty sizable gap. It's going through 1 and 2 right now. Paletta, by comparison, only just going through 1. And now he starts to speed it up here. Get himself to the back of the pace car, that pace sedan. Only wanting to leave as much margin as possible. If he continues with that margin, though, doesn't want to catch it too quickly. If he keeps that gap, he can give himself a proper launch. And Barendregt and Everitt are going to have no idea how they launch it around. They're already to the back of the group, though. Stedman and Morales. They're 4th and 5th right now, and they might have a chance if more dramas happen. It's a 2-lap shootout then to decide Motegi. Paletta, who's been really aggressive on the fuel save. Pace sedans come in. Barendregt, who's led the most laps. Everitt, who's been given a second chance. Paletta looks to get going here. There's the green. Immediately Everitt now starts to counter this one. Barendregt on the inside. Everitt on the outside. The 2 title contenders as they go through. 4th and 5th, not much to deal with right now. But they're on fresh tyres. They've got a chance. Immediately Paletta's low. Everitt starts to dive even lower. He tries to get going. The white flag's coming here. Barendregt looking incredibly high through the corner. He's going to wash out a little bit here and attack off the exit. White flag. Paletta leads. Has he got enough in the tank to cover it off? Has he got enough tyre life to cover it off? Barendregt on the high line. Everett again calling himself low, but he's going to wash out in the draft as he tries to go through. Barendregt now with a real chance. Paletta diving low, to the apron, It's going to be, Barendrecht's going to wash up. Paletta's in the fence, and Everett's going to start searching low. Everett's going to come to the line. Alex Everitt will take Motegi. What a finish. Oh my word. And that was Paletta saying, by all measure, you cannot pass me. You cannot pass me. Barendregt pushed himself to the apron. Paletta didn't leave himself any room. Found the tyres. Paletta will be classified in 5th place as he found both walls coming to the end. But Alex Everitt, my goodness, what a run at the end to pick that off. That is what you call smash and grab sim racing. This is what happened to Jeremy. This is what happened then on the... Well, nothing happened there, so we didn't quite see too much of what happened, but Alex Everitt there, getting your victory. Oh, what an important finish that was, coming towards the end. So let's get confirmation of result then from Twin Ring Motegi, as everyone has been classified now over the line. Is the number 3, Alex Everitt, taking his 3rd race win of the season, doing so by a margin of a 10.5 over Thijs Barendregt, who had everything wrapped up, but the caution cost, with Alfredo Morales in 3rd, Dave Steadman in 4th position, last car on the leading lap. Leonardo Paletta, for all of those issues, smashing the wall through 3 and 4. He will still be classified as a 5th place finisher, with Andy Scott in 6th, Jeremy Pronk 2 laps down in 7th, having to get very aggressive with strategy. Alexander Rogenbach also got caught up in Ollie Peters' crash, 6th from the end, and those are the retirements, with Jürgen Pedersen unable to bring himself into play today. He found himself out of the race overall. Well, if there is any time to start talking to drivers, now would be it. Alex Everitt wants to have a bit of a word with us, so we'll have a little chat. Alex, I believe that's what we call smash and grab sim racing. You had no right by pace today to win that race, but it all fell into your lap as Paletta and Barendregt decided to fight incredibly hard for it.
One of the most dramatic finishes in Crest history, I reckon. I didn't deserve to win that today, definitely not. It's a bit of a pardon the vocabulary here, but a bit of a scummy win for me, but at least I wasn't involved in what happened between Thijs and, I think, was it Alfredo up there?
Leonardo,
excuse me. But Thijs deserved that today. He really did. He just seems to have it on these bigger speedways over me. Is something I'm going to have to work on, particularly as we're going to Texas next week. But hey, take each race as it comes. I'm proud of the win tonight. Not 100%, but I'll take the points. I'll certainly take that.
Well, it was getting close between you and Tyson in the championship, and it seems like if one of you is first, the other one is second. But let's talk about what happened during that race, because it seemed to be very tame in terms of racing. There was a lot of fuel save, it looked like, especially from the ALP drivers today who were around. How much were you looking at your fuel save, and especially your fuel mixes?
I definitely considered it. After about 20 laps, I thought, right, well, actually, it was just, as soon as I stopped fighting Thijs after a few laps, I just sort of thought, right, well, I'm going to see if I can sit behind him and just stay in 6th gear for longer and try and save fuel that way, because we knew it was going to be close we knew it was going to be close to get to a 1-stop. So that didn't work. There was just so much aero push tonight, which was a bit frustrating. We couldn't really race. So something we'll have to look into next time. But definitely in the second stint, I decided to give it a good blast out of the pit lane to get the fastest lap bonus point. But after that, when I realised Thijs was still 4 seconds up the road, I put the fuel mixture down to 5, hoping it would save fuel, and it nearly did just enough. But thankfully the caution came out and saved my bacon a little bit. So a lot of luck in this race, certainly on my part.
Well, luck is needed. Well, you say that everything's bigger in Texas as well. Texas Motor Speedway. You said it yourself, you're not in maybe the best position on these longer tracks. So how do you take this sort of victory here and go, right, I've got something I shouldn't have had here. How do I get the next stage?
I'm going to have to practice a little bit in dirty air, it seems, because that's what's letting me down. But there's a big opportunity here, like you said. But I am very much looking forward to the tracks in the midpoint of the season. Richmond's one of my favorite tracks in Indy, as is Kansas. And I really, really like Kentucky, which is coming up later in the schedule. So, if it doesn't happen at Texas, I know it may happen later on other tracks. So that's the target, really. Just keep finishing races and keep finishing well.
Well, the floor is yours right now, Alex. Shout out sponsors. Who gets it done for you?
Apex Tracks again for sponsoring us, providing the prizes for this series, and a big shout out to all the other sponsors, which you can find in the description of these live streams, whether you're watching on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitch.
No worries at all there. Alex Everitt, a victory overall there in that one. We're going to bring in Thijs Barendregt for a little bit of a talk. Thijs, it looked all set for you there today. You led pretty much nearly every lap of that race. Came in for fuel just to make sure it was okay. And it looks like Paletta really tried to back up there and give himself enough of a margin to defend on the final 2 laps.
It's a shame. I know at the beginning it had to lead to win the race. It's when the tires are gone, it's not easy to pass. And so at the beginning, I really tried to stay out of Alex, and it worked out. And then was just looking at the fuel number, trying to make that lap 50. In the end, I could have pitted on lap 51, but I was like, I'm gonna pit on lap 50. That's good enough. I could have made it till the end, but I was just praying for no yellow because I knew no one else was going to be able to make it to the end on one stop. And then yellow happened with like 7 to go. So it wasn't to be, and then I knew like I have to take the fresh tires. Like otherwise you're a sitting duck. And I think Leonardo just tried it without taking the tires.
Let's talk about that move, because it looked like you committed yourself down to the inside, even to the point where you were beyond the limits of the circuit there. So for you, how important was it to try and make that happen? And did you just reach a point there in terms of that overtake where you hit the point of no return?
Well, he wasn't completely down to the white line, so I was like, I'll take the slipstream, and I'm going down, and then in my opinion, he just pushed me down even further when there was no return back. Otherwise, I would have punted him off. And then I just tried to keep it, try not to hit him or Alex or anything else. And then I was back on the track again, and I was like, oh yeah, I have to get back on throttle and try to win it. And well, Alex was smart enough to be there to pick up the pieces.
Certainly,
but it was interesting last lap, to be fair.
It absolutely was on a race today, which can be considered tame. Texas a week from now. How are you feeling right now after a race like this? Opportunity lost for a couple of points, but again back down to the grindstone for the next race.
Well, I just have to practice a bit on the quali. I seem to lose there, although I don't know where my quali lap came from. It was like 2/10 faster than I did in practice, and that really helped me getting up in front. Otherwise it would have been a hard race like the rest in the mid pack. And I think I have to practice a bit more on my quali, and then although on Texas it's easier to overtake, but it's still important to have that track position. And I have to look at like what are the fuel numbers and how many pit stops do I have to do, what's the tire wear, and just be a bit prepared like I was today. But hopefully next time no caution at a bad moment and try to win it and lead the most laps again.
Well, the chances were certainly there. Who gets it done for you though, Thijs, after second place with what could have been a victory?
Well, I want to thank my parents for supporting me, trying to get this win. But it wasn't to be. And of course BRT did an awesome job with the car again, with awesome paint still, and next week an even better paint, so I'm looking forward to that.
Well, so are we here up in the commentary box. Thijs Barendregt there joining us for action. But that's going to pretty much do it for us then here at Motegi. We'll head back stateside and over to Texas a week from today. A massive thanks to everyone who has helped get it done. Of course, to everyone who's been working hard at Crest Autosport to get it done, from the team, of course, of Alex and William, who's been behind the cameras here today. From our sponsors, of course, Apex Tracks, Track Racer, lovely stickers, 603 Autosport, Digital Motorsport, Esports Sim, and the GP Box. My name's been Jake Sperry, and in a race that had no right to be as entertaining at the end of today as it ended up being, we got ourselves a showdown. It was all about patience and who could manage what, and ultimately, Barendregt has learned a very big lesson. Can Thijs take that forward, though? That pain, maybe some would say, of losing out on a very winnable race? Can Alex Everitt find that pace to make sure it's a more credible victory by his standards? We'll only find out next week as we get some more action here with Crest Autosport.